Good morning, everybody. It is still Victory Monday, still feeling reasonably good, and I want to talk about something else from that game yesterday. I don't know if this is really a positive or a negative yet. It really kind of depends, but it's a thing that I believe is happening and needs to happen with regard to the Seahawks on defense. Frank Clark, I know that we have a pretty strong degree of affection towards him because he's an old Seahawk. He's a Seahawk from the older era. And I know a lot of people were excited when we brought him in, but I got to be honest, I'm not seeing that much from him yet. And if you want to give him a little more time, that's okay. We probably will. I don't think he's going anywhere. We did sign him. I imagine he's going to continue to play for the rest of the year. But I got to be honest, I'm not seeing anything from him so far. And I know it's just a few games, but I kind of was going into the Frank Clark thing with the expectation that he didn't have a lot left in the tank. If he did, I think that he would have at least done something in Denver, or another team would have picked him up for more than the veteran minimum that we got him for. So to me, I was already kind of prepared for Frank Clark to not really have much left in the tank. And from what I've seen so far, he's just kind of a guy out there. So Frank Clark is not the solution for me at Edge. Now, again, he's not going anywhere. I imagine we're going to keep playing him, so he has the opportunity to maybe pick up some steam over the coming weeks and maybe prove me wrong. But I'm looking to try to find another solution here. And I think that yesterday's game may offer a little bit of a potential way around this issue in the form of Dre'Mont Jones. So let's talk a little bit about Dre'Mont Jones here. So Dre'Mont Jones is obviously a defensive end in this defense. He's a 3-4 defensive end. He's a 4-eye guy. And in that role, I think he does fairly well. He's not great. Maybe we overpaid for him a little bit, but honestly, by this time next year, we're probably going to feel like we didn't because the contracts that guys like Dre'Mont Jones get are only going to go up and up and up because of the cap. So I like what Dre'Mont Jones is doing well enough in his current role. I think he played pretty well, but I noticed something a little bit in yesterday's game, and I think this might be the way out of leaning on Frank Clark heavily. So Dre'Mont Jones was playing a little bit of edge in that game. And I think this might actually be the best way for the Seahawks defense to move forward. Now, this chart is before yesterday's game, obviously, because yesterday's game, the data hasn't had a chance to be collected yet. But one thing I want to focus on here, I'm going to scroll down a little bit so you can see it, is the defensive line alignment snap counts. This shows where on the defensive line Dre'Mont Jones lines up. You can see that a vast, well, not a vast, but a significant majority of his snaps so far this year have come lined up as a defensive tackle or or excuse me, 4-eye defensive end. That's what these do. AGP, BGP, OVT, which is over the tackle, and then out, which is outside the tackle. So A gap, B gap, over tackle, outside tackle. So he usually lines up in the quote unquote B gap. So we're using him kind of the way I would have expected us to use him. Makes sense. We do see a decent amount of usage over the tackle, and we see a little bit of usage on the outside as an edge rusher. But I'm going to just make a guess here and say that when the week 10 data comes out later today or tomorrow, this number, the number of snaps he played on the outside, is going to go up pretty significantly. I think it's going to probably be in the double digits at the least because I saw him line up as an edge rusher a pretty decent amount. And I want to go back to 2022, which was his breakout year in Denver. This is the year that got him paid. And if you look at Dre'Mont Jones, he had a little bit of a shortened season because he missed the last couple games, but you take a look at Dre'Mont Jones, his defensive line alignment snap counts paint a very interesting picture. He lined up in the B gap less than he lined up outside the tackle, and he lined up over the tackle more than any other position. So in Dre'Mont Jones's best year. And I know he didn't put up monster stats or anything, but this was the year that got him on the map. This was the year that really got him paid. This was the year that made the Seahawks covet him. And by the way, let's remember how good the Denver defense was last season when they had to deal with the worst offense in the NFL, and they were still able to put up respectable numbers. And really, until the last couple weeks of the season, when Dre'Mont was hurt anyway, they were excellent. They didn't really fall apart until the Christmas game against the Rams. And again, Dre'Mont Jones missed those last 3 games. So he wasn't even involved in that. The Denver defense was great, and this is how they utilized Dre'Mont Jones. He lines up over the tackle about 300 times, and he lines up outside the tackle as an edge rusher about 200 times, and he lines up in the B gap about 200 times. So I really want to focus on the outside the tackle numbers because this shows he can do this and he can do it well. Like there are some games here where he's basically just an edge rusher. In this game right here, he lines up outside the tackle 30 times, this one 28 times, this one 23 times. So this is a part of his game that was utilized pretty heavily when he was at his best. And if you look at his previous years where he was good, but obviously a less notable player, there wasn't as much of that. Like if you go back to 2021, where he was good, don't get me wrong, he wasn't bad or anything, but you go back to 2021, you can see he mostly lined up in the B gap. He did a good amount of over the tackle stuff, and then he did a little bit of outside the tackle stuff. So you can see that the edge rusher part of his repertoire was not really being utilized. And you go back to 2020, which was his first significant year in the NFL, you can see that it was a little bit better, but still not all that much compared to what he was doing in the B gap. So you look at these alignment snap counts, and it seems like the more variety Dre'Mont Jones had in his alignment and usage, the better he was. So what I'm trying to say is I'm thinking that instead of giving Frank Clark a bunch of snaps where he's not really doing anything, he's not generating a push, he's not getting to the quarterback, he's not being a plus run defender, he's just kind of out there. Let's give some of these snaps to Dre'Mont Jones. Let's give as many as possible because he proved last year he can do this a lot and still be a pretty effective player. So Boye Mafe, obviously having a second-year breakout, you're keeping him out as much as you can. Derek Hall, Darrell Taylor, you're going to try to figure that out. You're going to try to balance their snaps out as much as you can. You know both guys have limitations, but you're going to have to get what you can out of those two. And then you have Frank Clark. You're going to put him out there as much as you need to, but make the deficit as small as possible that Frank Clark has to eat up, because if he does have something left, he's probably better off just playing a little bit rather than playing a bunch and just hoping he eventually gets lucky. Like, wouldn't it be better if he played 10 snaps a game and got to go all out on those 10 snaps? In order to make that happen, you're going to need another edge. And I don't think that other edge is on this roster somewhere else, like Levi Bell, Tyreek Smith. I think Dre'Mont Jones might be the solution here. So Dre'Mont Jones, let's play him at edge. I saw a good amount of it yesterday. We'll see if I was correct when PFF updates later. But I think this is the best way to go for this defense going forward. Play Dre'Mont Jones at edge. You don't need to activate another player to the roster to do it. You don't need to change anything too radically. You can still play him on the line a good amount. And let's remember here, don't get me wrong, this is going to create other problems. You did trade for Leonard Williams, so you can afford to do this now. In fact, looking at it, I think it might be reasonable to say that that's the reason. Maybe that's the reason why you traded for Leonard Williams. It frees you up to play Dre'Mont Jones in different places, because previously you had 2 defensive linemen on the team you really trusted, Dre'Mont and Reed, and then you had one guy who was just kind of a rotational veteran who was solid in Mario Edwards, and then you didn't really have anyone else you liked. You add Leonard Williams, it frees up Dre'Mont to maybe play outside. So maybe this was the plan. Maybe that's why you coveted Leonard Williams so much. You needed another pure defensive lineman because Leonard Williams is like 300 pounds. If he lines up at edge, he's going to be too slow, too lumbering. I don't think that's going to work. But Dre'Mont, it can work. He's a little bit lighter. He's a little bit quicker, better athlete. I think that Dre'Mont Jones could pull it off. So yeah, going forward, Dre'Mont Jones continue to play plenty of snaps in the B gap, continue to line up as a 3-4 end. Don't get me wrong, but I want to see what he can do at edge rusher for, I would say, at least 15 snaps a game. I think that would be really cool. I think he can do it. He's proven he can do it before. It's going to free him up a little bit to be the player that he was last year for Denver, which is what he did when you paid, which is what he did that made you pay him. And you can get by because of the Leonard Williams thing. Now, doing this, maybe you're putting a little too much of a load on guys like Leonard Williams and Jaron Reed now, because now they need to play a little bit more to make up for Dre'Mont moving outside. But it is what it is to a certain extent. I think that's better than having Frank Clark out there for a bunch of snaps and not really being all that effective. So let me know what you guys think, but that was something that I noticed yesterday that I think could be a good thing. It just depends on where we go with it, but this makes sense to me. This is, I think, the best way to utilize the talent that we have. Let me know what you guys think. I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. Hoping that the team commits to this, because I really do think that this would raise the defense up another level. Because Frank Clark, I'm sorry, I feel like I've seen enough, and what I've seen is just not good enough to make me believe there's anything better at the end of the rainbow. That being said, keep Dre'Mont out of coverage. Yeah, let's not do that. Let's keep Dre'Mont out of coverage this time.